public enemy number one. Creeping like a communist, it's knocking at our doors, turning all our children into hooligans and whores, voraciously devouring the way things are today, savagely deflowering the good old USA. It's Reefer Madness, Reefer Madness.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Cult Musical Zone. Today, we're going to talk about the criminally underrated cult musical classic, Reefer Madness, the movie musical. And today, we have two special guests that are cult musical aficionados, but also Reefer Madness, the movie musical aficionados. So we'll mute our microphones, and then once you want to introduce yourself, we'll unmute. So who would like to go first and introduce themselves? Jamie?
Oh, goodness. Okay. Well, hello, everyone. My name is Jamie Diamond. I am a drag king, drag artist, and also a shadowcast performer with the Junior Chamber of Commerce Players in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And I'm excited to be back on Cult Musical Zone.
And Mix.
Hi. Yes, I am Mix Universe. I defy categorization as far as my performance is concerned. I do a little burlesque. I do a little drag. I do a lot of shadow casting. And I sing too. I'm like a quadruple threat. And I've directed Reefer Madness shadow casts no fewer than like 7 times. I actually probably should have counted, so I had that information in my head, but I can't remember. It's been like 7-ish.
And that's why you guys are the perfect guest. So the first question that we're going to talk about is the first time that we saw Reefer Madness, the movie musical. As we know, it's based on the 1936 exploitation film Tell Your Children, which was got the nickname Reefer Madness. Now, Reefer Madness, the movie musical, came out in 2005. And the first time I saw it was in 2005 on DVD. I accidentally discovered it, as we all do with cult musicals. We accidentally discover all of these cult musicals. And I loved it. I loved the soundtrack. But at the time, there was no soundtrack. And it took a few years before Showtime and Ghostlight Records finally released an official soundtrack, which you can now stream on all platforms. But we'll start with you, Mix. When's the first time that you saw Reefer Madness, the movie musical?
So it was 2012, I think. And at the time, our Rocky Horror Shadowcast was having issues with, well, more specifically, our theater was having issues getting the rights to Rocky Horror. Long story. We'll do an episode on JCCP history, on our Shadowcast history, if you want more details on that. But so we were looking for other things to shadowcast. So that was actually the time period in which I gained a lot of my cult musical knowledge, because that was what we were doing. We were looking at other cult musicals, like what else can we do? So that was the first time that I saw Reefer Madness. And I have to say, I didn't get it. I was young, and I was not very culturally knowledgeable. I was a little bit of a sheltered kid. So I was like, what is this strange phenomenon? And I fully didn't understand it the first time I saw it at all.
Jamie?
Well, I gotta say, not understanding a movie the first time you see it, I think it's like a staple of the cult classic aficionado experience. I think that's kind of a requirement for these musicals, of just being confused out of your mind, but also very much interested in it.
Yeah, like I'm down for the ride. I don't know what's happening, but I'm here for it.
Exactly. So mine, actually, the funny thing is my cult musical aficionado status kind of started to cement itself pretty recently. I was a Rocky Horror fan for a while, but I didn't really know about other musicals until I started gaining an interest in joining the Shadowcast. So it was definitely during quarantine. It was around, I was following the JCCP. I was, the little fan watching from Morgantown, which is like an hour and a half away from Pittsburgh, and, just wanting to have something to do, so I would watch the JCCP's virtual shows. Like they did, like, you know, a virtual Rocky.
Wait, that was the first time you saw Reefer Madness, was when we streamed it live?
So yes, it was the live stream. However, I watched it before the live stream. I watched Reefer Madness because of the live stream.
That
So
makes me so happy.
yes, so I got into Reefer Madness because I wanted to understand what was going on with the JCCP's production. And so they streamed it for 420. They streamed their production of it on rhpslive.com. And I just had a blast watching it. And I remember watching the movie just being also same reaction as Nick's, of being confused, but the soundtrack's really good.
Yeah, I can't stop singing that Tell 'em the Truth song in my head.
Exactly. And then, you know, what's also great is that, you know, I joined the Shadowcast. Yeah, I joined JCCP actually in January of this year. And that was like my first special. Actually, no, that's a lie. Shock Treatment was my first, but that was kind of like the first, like, I had a bit of a I had more parts to play. I was in a lot of the dance scenes and things like that. So that was kind of like the first one where I really felt like more ingratiated into the cast. So Reefer Madness will always have a little special place in my heart because of it. They're linked with the JCCP.
I love that.
Awesome. Well, okay. So a little bit of background information. Remember, there's like feedback if we don't have our mics muted. I'm sorry. It's Teams, guys. I'm sorry.
That's
it's this
okay.
platform.
All good.
I was thinking about this. This movie, I don't even think it's getting the recognition that it needs yet. I'm so glad that you all are shadowcasting it. Hopefully that lights a fire under other people's asses to keep doing this, because it's an amazing, amazing, amazing cult musical.
Tell them, Mix.
Yeah, so Jamie and I are clearly thinking the same thing, which is that, and not to jump around too much, but at the most recent Rocky Horror Convention, we actually brought a live shadow cast of Reefer Madness. And not only did we bring in a lot of our own cast members who are familiar with shadow casting this movie, but we casted people from all over the country in Rocky Horror shadow casts. And I actually did this, I spearheaded this whole project of casting people from all over the U.S. in a shadow cast of Reefer Madness in Rhode Island this past summer. So, and I know for a fact that did make more people interested in shadow casting Reefer. So hopefully we'll see more of that as the years come along. Just don't forget you heard it here first.
Heard it here first, ladies and gentlemen. And we'll get to that when it gets to the legacy part of the questions. Now, the plot is very straightforward. It's all over the place, but I guess when I first saw it at 15 years old, I didn't understand that it was a satire, that it was a spoof, that it wasn't a cautionary tale telling you not to smoke marijuana. And what you've got to think about is in 2005 may not seem that long ago, but it was. There was hardly any recreational or medicinal marijuana passed anywhere. So it was actually very progressive in terms of its representation, in terms of its plot. And of course, it does it with its spoofing the satire of Tell Your Children. And believe it or not, Tell Your Children was actually it's sensationalism, of course, but that was during the Prohibition period where they tried to outlaw everything. But I did a paper for this in grad school. The reason that there was, prohibition in terms of marijuana is that was when the rise of the pharmaceutical company became active. So they didn't want any competition. But, reefer in terms of in cannabis consumption in the States wasn't very stringent and strict, but that was in terms of the same period of when prostitution became outlawed, etc. So Reefer Madness is actually onto something. And the plot is hilarious and it's completely over the top. But if you remove all of the nonsense of the zombies and just everything and the murder and the cannibalism and the prison rape and all of the electric chairs, if you remove all of that, Reefer Madness is quite kick-ass in terms of what it's saying about our government. Because 2005, like I said, this is pre-Obama. This was still in the Bush years. So, in terms of the plot, I think it's really progressive. What do you guys think?
Yeah, so one thing I will say, And I'm only doing this because you highlighted a lot of what I like about the plot, right? I think it's very telling. It's very illuminating as far as like the lengths to which the government will go to sort of mislead you and sort of give rise to its own agenda. One thing that I wish was talked about, and this is mentioned in the movie, but one thing I do wish was mentioned a little bit more is the fact that one of the biggest reasons why marijuana is a Schedule I drug is because racism. And I do wish a little bit that it addressed that a little bit more. But at the same time, I very much love the film for what it is. And I do think that it is progressive, especially for its time.
Yeah, absolutely. I was going to jump on what Mix was saying as well. Like, obviously having racism being a huge part as to why, marijuana was made illegal. But I mean, I remember watching a documentary, I want to say it was 13 on Netflix, about the prison system in the United States. And they actually had a quote from Richard Nixon about like, was it Nixon or Reagan? I can't remember. I'm sorry. War on drugs, Reagan. So it was talking about how, like he said, oh, we'll just associate, crack with black people and things like that, and saying all these horrible things of associating different, like, banning the drugs as an excuse to go after people of color, essentially. And
Nixon.
Nixon. Okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I got the two mixed up there,
okay.
but they're both terrible anyway. So
I'm glad you touched on this point.
Yeah, they're both terrible. So they're both terrible guys anyway. So that's maybe why I got them mixed up.
Yeah. Reefer Madness is so cheeky and it's so tongue-in-cheek and it's so hilarious and it's so ridiculous. Sometimes you miss the satire because it's so over the top. Well, you don't miss the satire. I think you miss the depth of it. I mean, one of my favorite scenes is the very, very end when, Jimmy is pardoned, May is pardoned, and they go to, the bonfire and they're burning weed, and the African Americans run in their house, and there's a line in Tell Your Children that says something about next we'll go after communists and queers. And then Alan Cummings' character says, when danger's near, exploit their fear. And I think that takes a couple of watchings to really get how, like, dangerous it is. Go ahead.
It's a deeply intelligent movie. What I was going to say was that that's the part of the movie where they say, in case you missed the point, let us throw it in your face as hard as possible. And yes, I agree. There's a lot of depth that you kind of notice something new every single time. It's extremely well thought out.
Absolutely. And also there's it's chilling. It's like, especially when I performed in Tell 'Em the Truth for Con and for our production this year. And like, it's one of my favorite songs in the show. I'll talk more about it later, but it's just so, I'm really, you really kind of get swept up in like, the happy tune, yay, dancing, and energetic dancing, all that stuff. And then like, we're all marching together. It's all, we're all smiles pasted on our faces. And then that kicker, and like, it's hard to smile at that part. It's hard to smile when even though you're pretending to be, swept up in this propaganda and all that stuff. It's just so chilling reaching the last like 30 seconds of the movie, like. And I do appreciate them kind of shoving it in your face. Like, in case you forgot, this is all fascist shit that we're throwing in your face. We are making fun of this shit. Do not forget it. Don't get caught up in how much fun you're having right now. Like, that is appreciated. It's something I've grown to appreciate because I've had to watch it so many times for cast reasons. So I love it.
And actually, speaking of moments in the film that are much sort of deeper and lend a lot of depth to the movie itself, I just want to talk about every single scene with Mr. Kaczynski, where, he dares to speak against, what the lecturer is saying in the classroom, and is shamed, like, you're a communist. Oh, Kaczynski, that's a Russian name, isn't it? Meanwhile, he says it's Polish, but no, you're a communist. And everyone just is like, yeah. And then nobody else will say a word. No, everyone else is like, maybe this is a little far-fetched, but they have to keep it to themselves or else they're going to be, embarrassed. And it's like, it's very funny to watch this guy get smacked down so hard, but it's also I think the word chilling is the most accurate.
So yeah, I agree. I love his character. So yeah, I think Reefer Madness movie musicals ahead of its time. I think because it was so spoofy and glamorous, I don't think a lot of people took it seriously. But also we're talking about distribution. For whatever strange reason, it was distributed on Showtime. I mean, which leads into the cast. If you look at the cast list, this cast list is it's a treasure trove of incredible cast. You've got Christian Campbell, who is the brother of Neve Campbell, who appears in the film. Us 90s kids know who Neve Campbell is. You have Kristen Bell, who's had a reemergence in her career because of Veronica Mars and because of Frozen, etc. You have John Kaser, who is the Crypt Keeper, the voice of the Crypt Keeper in Tales from the Crypt. But he also is in the cult movie musical Monster Mash, which is based on the stage musical The Bridge is Out, I'm Sorry You'll Have to Stay the Night, which is based on the song Monster Mash. You have Alan Cumming, of course. You have Anna Gasteyer, who is SNL royalty. You have Christine Lincoln, who is from the 90s show Step by Step. She plays Joan of Arc. You have Susan
Sanger. She was the original Susan in Tick Tick Boom, or one of the original, not the original. She was she does the she's on the soundtrack, the 90s soundtrack.
You have, Alan Cumming, which is, of course, he is cult royalty. You have Robert Torty, who was in Joseph Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat as the Pharaoh. I mean, Susan Tyrrell, who is in Crybaby, who is in Forbidden Zone, who is in Rockula. She is one of
Wait,
the.
who's she in Crybaby?
She is she's Iggy Pop. It's Crybaby's.
Yeah. What's her name? Oh my God, Ramona. Or
Own
is that her name? Oh, it's been a minute. Anyway, I didn't mean to get us off track. I apologize. Please go on.
Google. Ramona. It's Ramona. It's Ramona. Sorry. So
Ramona Ricketts, of course. How could I forget? Ramona Ricketts.
So she was in, of course, Crybaby. She was Queen Doris in Forbidden Zone. She is in Rockula, which is another cult movie musical. So she's in the classroom. She's one of the spectators of the film. So you have a treasure trove of all these people. A lot of them are Canadian actors because it was filmed in Toronto. You have Alexi Johnson, who is in the Disney Channel movie So Weird. She plays one of the angels. But like I said, I digress. It's full of such a talented cast, which makes you wonder, why didn't they release it in theaters? But then again, maybe because it was 2005 in Reefer Madness. It makes you wonder why it was just distributed on Showtime. What do you guys think about the reason of it going straight to TV?
I actually know one or two facts about this. Reefer Madness, well, obviously it was a stage show first, right? So the writers, I believe, actually had a lot of trouble getting any studios to pick it up. But Showtime at the time, I did an episode about Reefer Madness actually not too long ago and got a little bit of a history lesson about it. This is why I know this information. But Showtime was at the time in a little bit of like an experimental phase, and they were trying to push boundaries. So they actually picked up Reefer Madness like with a lot of enthusiasm. And I think that's the main reason why, the producers were like, well, they want it, so we might as well, this is where we're at. Like, let's give it to Showtime.
And I remember when I got it on DVD in 2005, I thought I was losing my mind, but then I looked at the trivia. It was brownie scented. The DVD case was brownie scented.
Yep. Oh, I have a brownie scented one. It's my favorite fucking item in the world.
Go ahead, Jamie. Do you have any?
I was just laughing at that. That's incredible. Like, smell-o-vision.
The next time you come over, I'll make sure you get to smell my DVD case, because I've had that DVD for like 10 years and it still smells like chocolate. That's
amazing. Impressive. That is very impressive.
questioning. So we talked about this plot. There's so much to unpack with the plot that it's so complicated. I mean, you think that it's straightforward, but after a couple of viewings, you're like, wow, this is really not just calling out, American war on drugs, but also, homophobia and racism, et cetera, et cetera. The communist red herring fear, etc. So this next question that I always ask on the podcast is, if you had to choose two favorite songs in the film, what would they be and why? My first favorite song is The Stuff. Yes, she's talking about marijuana, but the way that Anna Gasteyer delivers that song, you feel for her. And it's like, it's so beautifully done. And I think Anna Gasteyer is such a criminally underrated singer. And then my second favorite song is Listen to Jesus, Jimmy, but tied with Mary Jane and Mary Lane, which actually won an Emmy. All right, what's y'all's
It was
favorite
written
song?
specifically for the film, actually. It wasn't in the stage show. And part of the reason why they wrote the song was so the movie could be nominated for an Emmy. Just throwing in fun facts wherever I can here.
Go ahead with your favorite songs, guys.
All right. Well, as I mentioned before, Tell 'em the Truth is one of my favorites. All of the, you have a lot of fun listening to it at first, then then of course you listen to it multiple times, especially in rehearsal. And then you realize, especially because when you use lyrics as cues, you really start to pay attention to what they're saying. And then you start to, you kind of think about, oh, this isn't as fun as, but I don't know, it's just such a good song for like it's so peppy and fun, but also like awful. I just love it for that duality, And then for my other favorite, that's so hard. I'm gonna have to go with the reprise of The Stuff because I don't know, it's just, yeah, especially for the same reasons that you mentioned that you loved The Stuff. Like it's that exact same reason why I love the reprise of it. Just because I remember we were like, it's attached to one of my favorite memories of Con. Was when that scene was happening on stage, we were all backstage, like peeking through the curtains, like watching the scene happen, because everyone who was not on stage at the time was just watching what was going on stage, and we went berserk. I mean, it happens every time. Both times we've done Reefer Madness, and people just going berserk when May finally, stands up to Jack and kills him. Like, it's just that even with all like the craziness and the satire and all that stuff, it's such a satisfying moment. And
it's like we've seen the movie, we know that she's gonna kill him, but when we see it happen, it still just gets you so good. It feels so good.
Absolutely. I mean, most of the people in the movie are like kind of low key terrible, but she's relatively like, I'm gonna leave like Mary and Jimmy out of this for a second here, but like she's kind of on the slightly more innocent side of things. Not entirely innocent, but that's that. Yeah, I'll put a pin in that. I might be getting ahead of myself, but yeah, that's why I just, just the yes factor of The Stuff.
Nick, what is your two favorite songs from the film?
So this is 100% going to be colored by the experience of performing it and directing it. So I guess just keep that perspective in mind. I love Five and Dime because I love the dance. I have it has a special place in my heart because of all of the hours and hours and hours and hours that I've spent teaching and rehearsing that dance. And every time that I do it, it's a little bit improved. We have like this part's like a little bit closer. The first time we did this dance, we simplified it down. And it's been sort of building up since. I just love Five and Dime. It's just really fun. It's just a really fun song. The tango's great. It's just, there's no deeper meaning. It's just a really fun song, and I love it a lot. My second favorite song is Mary Jane, Mary Lane, for sure. I love it. The writing gets me, the similes at the beginning, like, you conquered me like Charlemagne, smeared me like a ketchup stain, like, that's poetic fucking genius to me. I just can't handle it. And even just the scene itself is just so fun to watch. But I do have to give special mention and have to be in agreement about the Stuffs, both of them. Just because of what Yin said, I just had to pop in with Anna Gasteyer is impressive because not only did she make us feel for the character, but she still simultaneously managed to walk the line of being very silly and not dropping that satirical over the top energy. And the fact that she could do both at the same time in the same song was a lot for me. So honorable mention for the Stuffs.
So that leads into the question, if you had to pick 2 favorite characters from the cult musical and why. And I think mine, of course, is May, because she actually goes through a redemption arc. I mean, I feel for her more than anybody, and because Jimmy kind of had it coming. I mean, you know, but I think May actually had a redemption, and like when she kills Jack with the hoe, you're like rooting for her. And I love when she like realizes that the president's coming, and she looks at her, she's bloody and gory, and she looks at herself in the mirror, and she's still like, and then like JFK or not JFK, uh, Roosevelt's like, I want to speak to the bloodied woman. And then, really weirdly enough, my second favorite character is Sally, because she's always horny. She's always horny. She's always looking to she's just like, especially when like Jack and Jesus. Can't even think tonight.
Not
Jack,
Jesus though.
Jack, you're fighting. She's like, oh, oh. Who wants to go next with your 2 favorite characters?
Okay, I have to go with Jack definitely for one of them. And I say, I like Jack as a character, not as a fictional person, right? He's obviously a piece of crap. But Steven Weber's performance, though, is the way he pulls it off just really does it for me. He really, really strikes the line that tickles me as far as like taking his role. I guess it's kind of the same thing I was saying about Anna Gasteyer, is taking his role very seriously to the point where it is too serious and very silly. So Jack's definitely up there. And Jamie, pick one of yours, and then I'll come up with another one while you talk.
Suddenly I've forgotten all the characters. No, I'm kidding. I definitely agree with you, James. May is definitely one of my favorites. But oh man, my other favorite. Oh.
What about sexy Jesus? Lord.
Who? Not Jesus?
Yeah. Who's always like, I mean.
Yeah.
I love every character, even out in the classroom.
I know who my other one is. Mr. Kaczynski. It's Mr. Kaczynski. Yeah, that's my other one.
I think I'm gonna have to go with Ralph on this one as well. Like, I don't know. I just love like his feral energy, I guess, and just like, I mean, even the fact like when Jimmy's first introduced to him, he barks at him essentially, like, yeah, like
it's so good.
And you think like he's the sex fiend until Mary Lane gets a whiff of Reefer, and then she's like, I feel so naughty. He's like, and then he can't handle it.
Wasn't ready for that.
Yeah, just like, like what's the matter? You're having fun? No, I'm really not. Like, I just laugh. Like, just the person who plays Ralph, just like the hilarity of it all, and I don't know. It's just fun to watch. It's also fun to watch people play Ralph and watch, like, especially like, maybe I'm also maybe a little biased because of Khan as well, but I love the Commodore who was one of the people who played Ralph. Usually a pretty like, I always pictured him kind of like a put together, more reserved kind of person. It was so cool to see him be Ralph and to just kind of like get out of his shell a little bit. So I just love maybe I just have a thing for like the batshit crazy characters, I guess. But I mean, he's got one of the best songs in the movie, which is, Little Mary Sunshine, and then of course Murder too, which is like, again, it's impossible to pick a favorite song and a favorite character. It's just all just so fun.
I forgot about Murder when we were talking favorite songs. That might be up there for me, really.
Same here, especially the ending of it.
And he eats Sally.
You know what, though? They were taking too long with that grub. They were taking too long. You got hungry.
Lord. So, this leads it. I guess you guys are experts to talk about this. So, what has become of the legacy of this cult movie? I know that it was finally re-released on DVD and Blu-ray, but they put a lot of emphasis on Kirsten Bell on the covers because she, of course, had a reemergence in her career because of her TV show and now because of Frozen, etc. So if it was released on Blu-ray, they released the soundtrack finally. But there was a charity screening recently, I believe in 2020 or 2021. It might have been in 2019. But as far as it like spreading online, I know it's on Tubi. I think at one point it might have been on Amazon Prime, but it sort of stopped there. So what do you think that you all are contributing, hopefully, to get it spread to where it is shadowcasted and more people know about this incredible movie?
So part of me wishes I had a little bit more of the answer, because one thing is that even though we do shadowcast this typically once a year, unless something happens like, I don't know, COVID, but we don't typically get great numbers because, again, it's like you said, it's not a movie people have heard of. And something that was a hard-won lesson for us was that just because somebody likes Rocky Horror does not necessarily mean that they're going to enjoy Reefer Madness. So I think that a big part of it is finding the niche audience and figuring out who that is. And it's something that we've been working on a little bit more. It's definitely more so it's the cult movie nerds more so than the musical nerds, right, that are into Reefer Madness. And I think that that's a fine line to walk, but I think it's an important one as far as, I think you just have to show it to the right people and they will spread the word to the right people that they know, and so on and so forth. That being said, clearly the sort of publicizing of our shadow casts has been a contributing factor in spreading the word. Like, obviously that's what made Jamie watch it. And like I said earlier, having done this at a convention now and people having a little bit of context for what a performance of this might look like, I think that will help to sort of spread the good word of the Reefer Madness.
You made a really interesting point, and you guys can answer this. You can shake your head yes, but then I'll lead it into another question. Did you find any pushback from you screening this instead of Rocky Horror? And I mean, Rocky Horror is a religion. We all know Rocky Horror is a religion, but a lot of people are open-minded to exploring other, because if you watch the Phantom of the Paradise episode, Phantom of the Paradise was the very first cult movie musical. Rocky Horror came out a year later. Rocky Horror sort of followed the lead of Phantom of the Paradise. So, sometimes Rocky Horror fans, are just now coming around to shock treatment, are coming around to Hedwig. Did y'all find any pushback from Rocky Horror fans when you wanted to shadowcast Reefer Madness?
You know what? Not from the audience. A few folks, specifically towards the beginning. So first of all, Rocky Horror is an easy film to shadowcast, relatively speaking. Reefer Madness is a very fucking difficult show to shadowcast. There's a lot of choreography. There are 3 times as many characters, et cetera, et cetera. It was more so, I think, certain folks, and I don't begrudge them this thinking, this makes sense to me, but they were like, I joined a Rocky Horror shadowcast. I'm not here to do this other weird ass movie. But as far as the audience goes, no, we've never really gotten pushback, and I think part of it is because we don't necessarily sacrifice a Rocky show and replace it with Reefer Madness. Typically, it'll be like an add-on.
Jamie, how did you feel if, you were part of the shadowcast of Rocky Horror? I'm not sure. Did you guys do shock treatment in conjunction with Rocky Horror? And then Mix or whoever else suggested Reefer Madness. What did you think about now performing this equally as great cult movie music?
Yeah, I mean, like Mick said, it's very different than putting on a production of Rocky. I will say, though, that it's definitely made me a better shadowcaster, better performer. I mean, obviously, like, our directors, Mix and CJ, did a fantastic job directing this year. And of course, Bassett, let's go with the Sam the Hobo, who is the co-director for Con, definitely made the experience so much more fun. But I mean, when it comes to like how I knew that it would be a thing that we would do because I watched the live stream and I knew it was coming and I was definitely very excited to be a part of it. I mean, I watched the JCCP from the sidelines for a while and just kind of seeing that going from watching the live stream of it to a year later performing with it with everyone and being a part of the dance numbers and like not just singing along to the soundtrack but actually practicing for it like while driving so it's definitely very special to me and it's so fun and so fresh and it's nice to I don't know I get why some people are like I joined a Rocky cast. I just want to like, do Rocky. I love any opportunity we get to try something different. Any opportunity we get. So it just makes it so much more fun for me.
Jamie, did you see a lot of enthusiasm from the audience from performing this?
I think our audience definitely for referring to our April performance, definitely because we had friends come in from different casts to come perform and to watch. And, we had our friends come in to see us. And so the energy in the building was fantastic. Everyone was just having a good time. People were sometimes doing little callbacks where they could, and I mean, even the audience was getting in on to Jack getting murdered. Like, people were definitely like, we were started cheering, then they started cheering, and then the con audience was just eating it up when we did it in the summer. So it's, it brings people together that it just brings people together in odd ways, like a lot of cult things do.
I know that, Rocky Horror, it's not that hard now to obtain the rights to do it. Shock Treatment was so hard for years for people to try to get the rights to it because it was in obscurity. Now I think it's getting easier to obtain. Phantom, of course, is getting easier to obtain, but now Phantom, Shock Treatment, and Rocky Horror are all owned by Disney. So we'll see if that can continue. I know Teen Witch and Rockula are so hard to perform. They're so hard to get the rights to. But because they change hands every few years. I think Disney actually owns it now. Not Rockula, but how hard was it? Did you guys have to sort of segue and get the rights, or did you guys just do that? I mean, how did you all go about that?
So I don't want to say too much, just as far because I don't fully understand copyright law, and I don't want to. I'm pretty sure it was all legal, but also I don't fucking know, right? So, but that said, I know that it is rather difficult to get the rights to do Reefer Madness in a theater, and part of the reason is because Showtime isn't a movie, or rather isn't a theater company. It's a television movie company, right? So I think that's part of the reason why the rights are really difficult to get. But there are loopholes in the form of private events. So basically what it is you throw a private event, and it's not necessarily for profit. You could do a suggested donation, right? And then suddenly it's legal. The law is
And
great.
it's a because how do big corporations who get their claws into these cult movie musicals expect these cult movie musicals to carry on a life of their own? Do they expect them to just remain popular? I think with Rocky Horror and with cult musicals, the fans are what keeps it alive. But I mean, sometimes these films slip through the cracks and they almost disappear in obscurity, like Rockula did, and Teen Witch did for a few years, and all these other cult movie musicals, Pirate Movie, Earth Girls Are Easy. So I think, there are loopholes, but it's fine because it's like, it needs to be seen. Reefer Madness doesn't need to be just confined to Amazon Prime or Tubi. It needs to be performed. It needs to be seen. I think it should be on Broadway. I think it's better than anything that's on Broadway right now. Jamie and I were talking before you joined the meeting. One of the composers for Reefer Madness, the musical, did Heathers the musical. And it's like, it needs to be seen, not only because it's a kick-ass movie and it's a kick-ass musical and it's got killer songs that should have won the Oscar, but there's a message underneath the goofiness. What do y'all think?
I think that the themes highlighted in Reefer Madness are maybe, if anything, like even more relevant today than they were at the time that this was released. Because we are kind of in a time where propaganda is sort of being disguised under the guise of, say, media, or under the guise of entertainment. And I think that, the sheer subject matter of this being, a government funded documentary, or at least presented as a government funded documentary, and sort of spreading that misinformation in such a way that is so sneaky, is really, really prevalent today. And I think that it could really be a very eye-opening sort of allegory for the way that information is presented to us these days.
Jamie?
Absolutely. Piggybacking off of that, I mean, just the way information is spread, it's not even just like thinking about like, straight up government propaganda or anything like that. That stuff can be easily spread by, some person in his basement, with, all these different, how easy it is to spread information these days. It's not like it's not like we're relying on, film strips or, pamphlets, or even just, a movie in a movie theater. We have access to so much information these days, and with that information comes so much misinformation. And even, I'm not gonna lie, this movie also kind of talks about like, mob mentality and almost cult-like mindset, and how, I mean, look at QAnon, look at like, this is a rise of, right wing, alt-right whack jobs coming up on the, finding these little hidey holes and things like that on the internet.
Sorry,
yeah.
I just immediately started thinking about 4chan.
Yeah, exactly. And so, in the movie, you get swept up too with it. You very easily get swept up into it. You're singing along, you're dancing along to, especially Telling the Truth. I'm going to bring it back to that. You're just having a great time, and you realize exactly what you're celebrating or what the people on the screen are celebrating. And, you get swept up in it, and it's so easy, and like no one's immune to it. And you see, this turned into a soapbox conversation here, but whatever.
Our episodes always turn deep in the end because it's sort of the wheels are turning, because the last few episodes is that cult movie musicals are intentionally supposed to be campy and spoofy. Sometimes they're not meant to be campy, like The Apple was not meant to be campy. But they have a lot of truth and a lot of message. I mean, Rocky Horror's message, it came out at the perfect ample time with the free love sort of, don't dream it, be it. Shock Treatment, predicted the world that we live in now. But if you watch a Shock Treatment episode of this podcast, the world we live in now is much scarier than Shock Treatment's world. Shock Treatment literally predicted to the T the world we live in now. Phantom of the Paradise, of course, in the last episode I talked with the Phantom fanatics, is that, Phantom of the Paradise was really actually quite wicked in terms of its like predicting and sort of expose of the music industry. I mean, how the music industry is so evil. I mean, if you look at Michael Jackson and Prince and the things they had to do to sort of try to get out of their record contracts. I mean, Prince had to change his own name because they owned his name. And Reefer Madness is, yes, it's funny and it's hilarious. And God, I mean, it's so blatantly racist but it's doing it in a way that it's making fun of the people who actually feel that way. Like the Asian lady that's in the classroom, and it's like, and everybody looks at her when the guys like the Chinese guy's talking about eating children.
Yeah.
But it's doing it intentionally to sort of, I don't know. I think Reefer Madness is much deeper than people give it credit for.
I strongly agree. And you can just tell if you do any amount of thinking about Reefer Madness, and the characters involved. So I'm going to talk about Miss Poppy here. If you sort of overanalyze her role in the film, She is obviously running the Five and Dime. She, kind of watches over these kids or whatever. But she clearly has a rapport with Jack, right? Yeah, and that's the thing. She has this rapport with Jack. She's right there, ready to go when it's time for him to lay the bait. Hey, look at how good I am at dancing. Jimmy, why don't you come take dance lessons from me? She clearly has a role in corrupting these kids. So, even just looking at the role of Miss Poppy, suddenly there's a lot more to think about. And if you sort of pay attention to her, you can tell that the writers, this wasn't an accident. This was something that the writers considered. And it happens over and over again throughout the movie. The more that you think about the characters and their different motivations and like just little offhand things that they say, the more you realize just how much depth there is in the writing. And I love that. That's my favorite thing about it.
Yeah, absolutely. And also, I think it was Mr. Poppy in the original propaganda film, and they changed it for for the movie. And what was I going to say? Also, I want to point out the fact that after the whole tango sequence, her running the Five and Dime, but also the deliberate commentary about jazz music. And that whole scene, she's allowing jazz music into the space where the children are, and jazz music makes white women whores and blah, yeah, exactly, yeah. So there's that too, and I did not even think about that with Miss Poppy's role until you brought that up. So thank you, Mix, for that.
So as we conclude on that particular point, I think, Reefer Madness is the world of Predicted. I mean, I think our world's scarier than the world of Reefer Madness. We might have some rights that we didn't have in the 30s and the 40s, but at the same time, it's like
They're under attack.
the final message of when danger's near, exploit their fear. And I don't think it's a right-wing thing. I think it's a left-wing thing. I think it's a centrist thing. I think they all do it. I think when anything, I think they all do it. They all do it, especially, I mean, they all do it. And they always will do it. Which I think makes Reefer Madness so ahead of its time. Oh, on the lighter note, I mean, it's a very deep movie, and it needs to be seen. It needs to be seen on 420. But this is a very lighthearted question. So I always ask this: if you had to name the group, the cult that follows Reefer Madness, the movie musical, Hedwig's fans are called Headheads. We decided in the Best Little Whorehouse in Texas episode that they're either the Moaners, the Sidesteppers, or the Chicken Ranchers. And then the Phantom ones are called Swanages, or the Swanage. If you had to name this cult that follows Reefer Madness, the movie musical, what would you name them?
I feel like I can come up with something better than this, but my brain goes Reefer Fiends.
I was just gonna say that too.
Right? Yeah. Yeah, Reefer Fiends is definitely. Yeah, I like that one.
The Five and Dimers.
Ooh, the Five and Dice. Yeah, I like that too. There's got to be a line somewhere.
Janers?
What's that?
The Mary Janers or the Mary Laners?
Oh, I like that.
I mean, I do like Reefer Fiends. I don't know, it just works with just like the cheesiness of the movie and the over the top fear that it's exploiting here. And also it's how we also refer whenever we had to group rehearsals and stuff, whenever it was like Jack, Sally, May, and Ralph, we were just refer to, okay, Reefer Fiends, you have a rehearsal at this time. So I just feel like it just fits well.
Oh, yeah.
That's awesome. I hope that you guys are sparking something that it's like, okay. And an idea came in my mind a couple days ago. I think we should have an online cult musical con with cult musical fans around the world where you perform something from your favorite cult movie musical.
I love that.
I am dying for someone to do the stuff.
Yes. Well, hey, I mean, if you can make it out to Pittsburgh ever, then I would choose around 420. Typically the weekend closest to 420, you can come to Pittsburgh and see us do Reefer Madness, and somebody will do this stuff.
Will y'all live stream it? Will you guys ever live stream it for our fans who are across the pond or whatever?
What would be amazing to me is if we could get somebody to sort of be in charge of that. Part of the issue is that our space isn't necessarily friendly. It doesn't like have a great place to film from. And the other issue is that Reefer Madness having 700 million characters, usually we don't have enough hands to hold a camera and deal with the live stream. But now that we have more fans who like watching us do this, who are far away and can't necessarily make it out here, it is something that we have been sort of thinking about. So it's something I'm definitely going to be looking into for next year.
And we have done like the broadcast on rhpslive.com, which is it's pre-recorded of our performances. We just rescreened ours not too long ago from our performance. And then, RKOCon, they actually, now that I think of it, RKOCon filmed every single performance at the con. And the video should be coming up in the next month or so. I'm not sure when it is. I don't have a timeline. I'm not in on that. But they filmed all of the performances. So if you want to see a shadowcast of Reefer Madness, you can. It will be on YouTube hopefully soon.
Yeah, under the channel RKOCon. They should have all of and they did a bunch of cult musicals too. They did Hedwig. They did The Room. Which actually I think their shadowcast of The Room got so raunchy that it got taken down. So I don't know if YouTube will allow them to upload The Room. But they obviously did Rocky.
Put it on OnlyFans.
Treatment. What am I forgetting? They did one more that I'm forgetting.
Repo,
of course, Repo.
That's another one. We have that episode tomorrow that I'm going to film. That's another one that's get taken on a life of its own. It took me quite a few times before I really appreciated Repo. It took me a long time before I appreciated Repo.
That's another one that the more times you watch it, the more you notice there's a lot more depth there than you saw the first time.
And this is scary too, and I'll talk about this on the Repo episode, but I feel like we're heading towards the world of Repo. With now, I think Pfizer sued Moderna. They're now, it's getting crazy. On a lighter note, I forgot to ask this question a couple of podcasts, the last couple episodes. What is your favorite line from the film in dialogue form or music form if you had to choose?
This is going to be the stumper. This, James, is where you're going to stump me because I don't know if I can pick one.
There's so many. I thought one of my favorite lines was by Sally, but I forgot what she said.
Damn, post.
I was gonna say anytime she runs into something. Okay, I have one. It's a May line, and it's so much fun because I love the backstage where all the Reefer fiends who love this movie know all the lines at this point. So it's May telling Jimmy to run away after Mary Lane dies, and so he's like, don't you see, he's trying to frame you. The way that she says it makes me laugh every time, and we're backstage and everyone's quoting it and trying to do the exact same inflection. And I think that's probably my trying to frame you. Yeah, just I don't know. I think that's one of my favorite lines in the movie for sure.
I think my favorite line is what changes the entire trajectory, entire mood of this stuff. It's though the fun sometimes escapes me when Jack gets stoned and rapes me. And it's beep, woof, woof, woof.
So jarring every time.
We'd all just collectively scream, yikes, during that part. There's a lot of yikes moments when we perform the show.
I like and Sally says, it's not true what they say about you all eating babies.
Yeah.
Care to stay for dinner?
You know what? Okay. I think I'm going to cheat. This isn't a line of dialogue. I really can't pick one. All of a sudden, I've never heard a line of dialogue from this movie ever in my life. But, right. But I think my favorite moment is right before Tell 'Em the Truth. And fucking FDR is talking about how for some reason he met Daddy Warbucks, right? And then everyone starts, that's the group laugh, ah, ha, 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 ha. And then Anna Gasteyer does that flip of the switch from ha 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 ha, the tragic victim, and it's just the most beautiful switch. That's my favorite line. Does that count? I'm calling it. That's the one.
Here I was thinking you were going to talk about the Annie reference with, like I said, like the Annie reference is going to be your favorite, but that's also just a great moment of the head switch. You got to nail the head switch if you ever going to play May. That's like the most important part.
I know what my favorite line is. It's by Sally. She goes, "I was in more laps than a napkin."
I love that one. Oh my God.
There's
You know what? I love Yahweh was mad and did plenty of smiting. That's a very good one.
Let's forget about the 5 feet and concentrate on the 9 inches.
I'm sorry, maybe it's the heat, maybe it's the changing of the seasons, but there's some really good looking actors in that film. I can't be the only one that Christian Campbell, honey, that was one of my awakenings at 15 when I saw him with the orgy scene and Alan Cumming as the great god Pan.
Moloch.
He has no right being that attractive playing a goat man. No right whatsoever.
I played Moloch, the Goat Man, and I gotta tell you, it is one of my favorite parts to do now. It's just so much fun. It's a really great butt and hip workout though, because you are grinding for a long fucking time. But I do like my favorite moments though from like performing it is that there's a picture, someone got a picture of me, because like he's on the mountain, like the volcano doing that whole swing thing, and then like that guitar riff, and then like he goes like this. And you get a picture. Use a picture of me exactly hitting that cue perfectly. And yeah, Alan Cumming, legend.
I will say I'm really, really thirsty for Robert Tordy as Jesus. He is way too fucking hot. I can't take it.
What is going on with us tonight, y'all? Because I was thinking the same thing.
It's hot out and we're thirsty.
From heaven. And I'm like, he's like, Jesus, I got a great high cooking here.
He says, "You think you can handle the high?" And I'm like, "No, I can't, Jesus." Oh man.
We're going to get Focus on the Family to or the 700 Club to ban this YouTube video if we keep talking about Jesus in a loincloth. But it's hard.
It's hard. Careful what you say there.
On that note, Lord, I gotta get a sip of water. Christian Campbell's he was my awakening at 15. I was like, I try not to stare, then it was like, oh Lord. Anyway, is there anything else y'all want to plug before we close?
Follow the JCCP at JCCPPGH on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and we have a YouTube channel. You can also watch other clips from our performances of Reefer Madness from 6 years ago, but it's there. You can watch it.
You can actually watch clips from the very first time we did it and compare them to the more recent times and just watch how the production's grown. It is incredible. You can follow us. That's at Jamie Diamond Drag. I am at Mix Universe 42. And we sometimes post funny performance things, and we love cult musicals, so you'll have some on-topic content to play with there.
And y'all have inspired me to sort of get together a cult musical con online with performances, and y'all are honorary members. So thank y'all so much for being part of this interview.
Thank you for having us.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much for having us. It's just so cool to talk to other people outside of the little circle that we live in to talk about this weird ass amazing movie.